Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler. I'm going to talk today, obviously, give you my take on the Super Bowl. Little good scope, bad scope. Also, Travis Kelce, talk about the bump there. And also Kyle Shanahan. He's going to get a lot of criticisms about, well, he can't win the big game. And, wrong decision in overtime and all that good stuff. And the players not knowing the overtime rules and everything. Give you a few other news and notes here related to the Super Bowl and more. But first, let's go ahead and take our first and only break. Come back here in 49 seconds. I'll hit the ground running here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to Sports, that is Sports with an S, another S, Scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. Alrighty then. Okay, so, the Super Bowl went about how I thought it would go. Defenses played well. San Francisco really took to heart how much they underachieved in the playoffs there. And, the commentators, was it Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, they had mentioned that, Steve Wilkes really got in the players. I mean, you've got guys like Chase Young. I forgot about Chase Young that made the big trade for him. Second overall pick. Very talented player. Excellent athlete. It's had some injury problems. But had a good Super Bowl. Him and Nick Bosa both. I mean, but you got players like that. I mean, you need more production with that type of pass rush. Javon Hargrave. But I found out he was injured as well, though. They had some injuries on their defensive line coming in, according to John Lynch, and I'll look at that later on in screenshot in news and notes here. But KC, that defensive line, they really penetrated that offensive line of KC. You really thought this could potentially be a runoff for the 49ers there, but it was some unorthodox play out of both running backs. I was saying to my dad and a couple of friends of mine at work, I did not see both Christian McCaffrey and Isaiah Pacheco. Watch a lot of their games. I'll usually watch the red zone and whatnot. They both fumbled the ball. And it looked like the ball was just, I understand it was a hit on the ball both times, a defender pushing and pulling, but I usually don't see it sliding out like that. So I don't know if this was a different ball, if it was a little bit more slicker than normal, but either way, it did not look normal for neither one of those players. They're not two players that have a habit of fumbling the football. Crazy stuff happened like this in type of Super Bowls. But, both teams had 2 turnovers. Again, San Francisco up 10-3 at halftime. Now, and I think that the fear Shanahan he's, Kyle Shanahan's a little bit like the coaching version of Peyton Manning in these games. Peyton has a tendency, always has, of overthinking big games and making crucial mistakes by doing so. I think that the mystique of Patrick Mahomes, of going against him and only having a 7-point lead, made him want to say, we've got to put them away early in the third quarter. We don't want them to catch on what the defense is doing and come back. And so he calls all these wacky passing plays here through the first three possessions of the third quarter. And when we start doing that 3 and out, eventually a guy of his status, of Mahomes, Brady, Elway type, they're going to figure you out and they're going to beat you eventually. They're simply going to beat you eventually, and obviously that's what happened. And that's about how I thought that game was going to play out, not to the exact, but I thought if you got both, even turnover battle, it's fairly even in the rushing game. I know Kansas City had a slight edge there in the pass, had the edge in the passing game, but for the most part, especially early on, 49ers had the edge, but it just, you could see where this was going. You could see, especially after the turnover in the third quarter, very unfortunate there. I mean, it was kind of a special teams. It wasn't really the problem. You really don't want to blame the player blocking up front, but the player picking up the ball. I didn't get his name, but the 49ers trying to pick that ball all after he knew it already touched, instead of simply falling on the ball. That's when you have an issue. You do not want to give up that possession. Just fall on it, even if it's going to be at the 10 or 15-yard line. Let that offense go out there with all those weapons and keep possession. Worst case, you just punt it back to them. You don't want to give the ball to this Chiefs team in the red zone. Obviously, they did, and that is simply what happened. But again, that's why I picked them. That's why I picked them to win the game here, per se. But I'll say this: you have to beat teams like this. You have to play a clean game, and you have to not panic when things go awry, and that's what I start to see out of Shanahan and whatnot. He's a young coach here, and you saw what I put. He's a fairly young coach. He's 45. He'll be 45 later on this year. I'm 43. He's only 2 years older than me. He's been coaching as a head coach. Now the guy's dad was a Super Bowl winning coach. He was on the fast track. He was somewhat born on third base, to say the least, right? But this idea to say, Kyle Shanahan can't win the big games. He's not a closer. I mean, we know that they lost the third quarter. They were up 28-3 in the third quarter in the Atlanta game as an offensive coordinator at Atlanta in the Patriots Super Bowl there. Got away from the run game there. Ironically, that particular Super Bowl got away from the run game there. We know what happened. And, of course, lost the 20-10 lead in the first Super Bowl with the Niners in Kansas City. And, of course, they lost a 10-0 lead here. Second half pass, got offensive scheme. Got a great offensive scheme. Good quarterbacks have a good running game. He's been to 3 NFC championship, however. But like I said, I could understand the narrative. 3 straight NFC championship games, losing leads in Super Bowls, 1 as a coordinator, 2 as a head coach. What does that remind you of? 3 straight NFC championship games, can't close it, can't quite get out of his quarterback what he wants, whether it be a Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it be a Brock Purdy, per se, can't quite get that much. Well, some people are calling Andy Reid possibly the greatest coach of all time now, since he's got 3 rings. But for some of you older listeners, I know JB Pags knows. He Philly sports guy I brought on this program before. You know that he knows. 20 years ago, these same criticisms These same criticisms, well, let this be technical, 19 years ago. The 2004-2005 Philadelphia Eagles had been to multiple NFC championship games with Donovan McNabb before that. They add Terrell Owens. Owens gets hurt in the playoffs. They still get to the Super Bowl. And there's major issues with Andy Reid. Some are saying maybe he doesn't need to be calling the games. That Andy Reid is simply here we go. This is what I read about Andy Reid. This goes back to 2005. This was a write-up from SB Nation. 2004-2005 Eagles. The Eagles could have led the Patriots at halftime. They ran the clock for 43 seconds to 17 before throwing again to Pinkston. That's when Reid decided to use the Eagles' first timeout, the first half only. That's just that drive. What about the long drive in the second half where they're down multiple scores and they're doing this long, drawn-out drive? And Bill Belichick, you could see him on the sideline. This was later revealed in NFL films. He's like, is the score right? Why is he doing this? What is he doing? Belichick's freaking out, right? Well, it's just poor management. And then you had the Terrell Owens, who's turned out to be a bad seed. He's sitting there criticizing and making fun of McNabb for throwing up on the field in that last drive and all this stuff going on. But so that happens. We know the guy's good with quarterbacks. We know he's got a good one. Kevin Cobb. I mentioned McNabb. We mentioned Michael Vick getting out of prison. Very rusty, getting the playoffs with him, getting a second $100 million contract out of the Eagles for Donovan McNabb. You name it. Jeff Garcia. How about that when we thought he was washed up there with the 49ers, goes with the Eagles and gets to the playoffs with him. Alex Smith, another guy that people thought was washed up. He was in his second team coming from the 49ers to the Chiefs here. He gets the playoffs with all these players, but he could not. Mind you, now Kyle Shanahan with Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy who was traded away. He was a second-round pick. He was traded away from the Patriots. All right, a guy who played 4 games and was hurt in that one game with the Patriots. So there was some concern there, a little bit, not much, but they play well under him. Trey Lance, a guy that was considered a project. He missed with him, the North Dakota State guy, but then he gets the very last pick in the draft, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, and they get to the Super Bowl with him. So, ironically, we didn't think that the guy who won the Super Bowl, some are saying, I'm not one of these people. I love Andy Reid. I've had my criticism of Andy Reid. Do you guys remember when he was down 24-0? The very beginning. Now, they came back with Mahomes. They came back with Mahomes and won that game in 2019 to the Houston Texans. But you look at all those games where they had bad second halves, just did not very vanilla with Donovan McNabb, and he was actually fired. He was fired from Philadelphia. So if you look at Kyle Shanahan, who's 45 years old, this guy's 66, by the way. Andy Reid's 66. He's Andy Reid. Andy Reid was Kyle Shanahan, so Shanahan's got a better resume 20 years ago. Think about if Kyle Shanahan, now he might get fired from the 49ers, like Andy Reid from the Eagles. And what if he gets his somewhat equivalent to Patrick Mahomes? What if, like his dad, gets his John Elway? What if he gets a Justin Herbert type of, because that's what I think. I do think that this Chiefs team, it's going to be a lot harder next year. They took advantage they got really good matchups this year in the playoffs at the right time. But that's why I'm not really dogging this guy out right now. But also, back to the overtime thing. All right, listen. He explained it to Kyle Shanahan. He says, listen, our guys were tired. The defense was tired. What, they going on 13? We want to get the ball. Now, these new rules, let me look at this. Talk about pandering. Listen, you still have to get stops in this league. Believe it or not, I know they want to make it about the quarterback. You cannot hit guys, but at some point you have to put it on your defense. Listen, we have to get stops here at some point, all right? I was okay, and I'm by myself on this. I understand the statistics, the team that gets it first and all that, with sudden death, the old rules. Then they said, well, whoever gets the ball first, if you score a touchdown, the game's over. If you score a field goal, the other team gets an opportunity to score a field goal too. All right. But if you score a touchdown or a field goal and the other team scores a touchdown, when they get the ball, this thing is over with. All right. So essentially, after the Buffalo game, against, ironically, Kansas City, they changed the rules. Here, I'll look this up on it. The league changed its overtime rules during the 2022 offseason, large part due to the Buffalo Chiefs divisional game. Chiefs won 42-37. It was a great game. After winning the coin toss in overtime, Allen and the offense never touched the ball. For the playoffs, only both teams must have the opportunity to possess. Okay. The way he's saying, and I'm totally okay with this, he's thinking, Kyle Shanahan, let's go down here, get the touchdown, and so that makes the opposition have to get the touchdown. Well, if they have to get the touchdown, doesn't that control the way you call the defense? Nobody said it from that angle. If you have to get the touchdown, plus they want the defense to rest. Well, they went on a long drive. They got to the 15-yard line. Purdy couldn't finish. They couldn't finish. They got the field goal. Then you're giving up big rushing plays to the opposition. At some point, you've got to put it on your defense. Chase Young, Nick Bosa, who is it? Wagner, whatever. Or not Wagner. Frank Warner, whatever. The great linebacker there. You got to bring some pressure. You got to get the stop. This is the worst offense they've had since Patrick Mahomes has been there. They couldn't get the stop. That's why I picked them. This defense is not as good as the previous defenses. Some would say maybe move off Wilkes, others won't. I don't think they will. But I'd much rather have a guy like what Dallas hired, Mike Zimmer, somebody like that. But either way, I'm okay with that. And again, Kyle Shanahan, they said the players didn't know. That's still a youth type of thing. That's something that Belichick wouldn't let happen. Belichick's biggest criticism is picking the players. But as far as preparation and rules and stuff like that, that's something you're going to run into when you get the young coaches here, But that being said, it really didn't make any. I mean, they just didn't make the plays. I'm okay with it. You know what? My defense is gassed. I got all these weapons. Get the ball first. Go down. Get the touchdown. The guy's arrested. It's your job to pull up within yourself and make Patrick Mahomes throw that ball. All that speed they got. Throw the ball to his right. Back it up. Don't let him run. Well, they let him run. And, of course, he ends up leading the Chiefs in rushing, and we know what happened there. He makes the great play. Excellent call, excellent everything. Tomorrow, I'll go where I got him ranked. But I'm reading some of the injury reports that came out after the game. Chiefs offensive line, Nick Allegretti, I think it suffered a torn UCL in the second quarter, played the entire game. So essentially, this is what Fox Sports put this out today. Well, it's Tom Pelissero, which is even more interesting. That's a guy with the NFL Network. Chiefs had an offensive lineman that had a torn UCL in the second quarter, played the rest of the game. Joe Thuney was already out. So at some point, they got to make the plays. And then Shanahan, overthinking the room, too many passing plays in the third quarter. You cannot play even. You have to dominate time of possession. They did not do that. Okay? They did not get the ball to Deebo Samuel enough. They did the Christian McCaffrey thing, but they didn't get it to Samuel enough, and ultimately that's what happened. But I'll say this. You got to give the credit first, though. Steve Spagnuolo, he's bringing blitz back. You know, he's blitzing like Dick LeBeau used to for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 90s. There used to be and I used to love that. I'd love that. Blitz Bird. That's what they used to be called, the Steelers. Here at Nashville, Greg Williams. If you're watching Richard Ferris, Greg Williams, former defensive coordinator, when the Titans made it to the Super Bowl, was a big blitz. So I'm a big blitz guy. I like it. But there's also an old adage, if you live by, you die by. So over the past 20 years, great defenses like Belichick's, even Baltimore really didn't blitz a lot. As of late, they don't blitz as much as they used to. This guy was blitzing against guys like Lamar Jackson, using safety blitzes. He was using McDuffie, a corner blitz. Well, that means if you're a very sharp quarterback, you have a mismatch out there somewhere because that's one of their best corners. Okay, with this best cover guy defensive backs, he's using them. And, of course, the guy knocks the ball down. It was perfectly timed blitz. Maybe he's going to bring blitzes back to the NFL. I don't like these quarterbacks getting comfortable and dropping the ball off. So Spagnuolo played great. And listen, Mahomes, 8 for 8, had exactly the kind of overtime drive you expect him to have. 8 for 8, 42 yards. 27 yards rushing, giving him 69 of the 75 yards. I mean, that is elite, man. That is very much elite. You cannot match that with Brock Purdy. You know how you match that? By keeping him off the field and by not throwing the ball 3 straight possessions, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Letting Mahomes getting familiar and processing your defense. And also your defense getting a little bit more woozy. You know, he's doing the rope-a-dope. For those of you, some boxing fans know, the historians, where you got Ali leaning on a rope. He's resting, and George Foreman is punching himself out. You know, he's not pacing himself at all. I want to say it was the 7th round. Then Ali knocks him out, man, you know. And this 7th round was overtime. But, and John Lynch, hey, good to see you. Prime. You know, Sonny, I was listening to, I've been rocking that Greatness by Quavo. That is a great song. That is good stuff there. I was listening to that while I was driving, by the way. So John Lynch is saying that Derek Armstead and Javon Armstead, the defensive tackle, played through a torn meniscus, and Hargrave played through a torn ligament in his thumb. So they're going to need surgery. So, I mean, this was just a battle of willpowers, you know, and it's like I said, you still have to play. Now I'm taking a step further since they won. You have to look at this team the way teams looked at the Patriots 10, 12 years ago, where you cannot make mistakes. You have to hold on to the football. You have to change up what you're doing in the second half, or Belichick will figure it out. You have to find ways to get pressure on Brady and cut off his check down. Same thing with Mahomes. You have to treat them like they're that, and people are throwing that word dynasty around, and they should right now, But that's the kind of respect that you have to put on this team. And I do think that they played a little loose in spot. They wouldn't quite as buttoned up as a team in the second half. I don't know if that was, I just read this stuff about Hargrave. There was injuries on both sides that's going to come through. But they didn't use that as an excuse. I don't expect them to. John Lynch is a former defensive player of the year, Super Bowl champ himself. He's not going to do that. I read about this stuff a lot after the games. But anyways, it was a good win. Probably tomorrow or Thursday. Depends on what's going on. By the way, tomorrow I'll have Jeffrey Deskovic back on the program, folks. Back on the program. And Thursday, I'm hoping to. I've talked to my pastor here, former Tennessee Titan Aaron Bryant. He is not a good pastor of Avenue South Baptist Church here in Nashville. He's a great pastor, and his son calls games in high school here in the Middle Tennessee area. I don't know where his son goes to school at. I'm trying to get him on this week. He's wanting to come on the program. I talked to him Sunday. Really good guy. Former Titan. He was on the practice squad the year they made it to the Super Bowl from 99 and 2000. Really good sports. You could tell he's a former pro athlete. Great big old guy, So anyways, I'll possibly have him on Thursday. He said email him through the church, and of course they haven't got back, but that was on Monday. We shall see. Hopefully at some point I'll get him on. But I'll have Jeff's get back on. Of course, Carlos Bad New Yorker Chavez back on Friday. All right, now. So that's my take. Shanahan is Andy Reid 20 years ago. He's got to get that somewhat equivalent talented quarterback. Whether they got to trade up at some point, I don't know. And they could have won with Purdy if they get a better matchup other than the Chiefs. But that's for another show. Okay, now, Travis Kelce. A lot come out about that. A lot has came out about the Travis Kelce thing. And, I've people want to down. Listen, that's why I think my show was a little bit better. That's why you need normal people doing sports shows. If you have too many ex-players, you're going to get a lot of excuse out of LaShawn McCoy. Nah, he's a great guy. He's a former Chief, right? And you just have a former player after former players. Listen to Fox Sports, ESPN. That's not a big deal. Bumping the coach. I'm saying, no, he was mad. He only got one catch in the first half. And I understand coaches and players argue. We saw Tom Brady argue with Josh McDaniels on the sideline. I've seen John Gruden face-to-face with Keyshawn Johnson. Keyshawn Johnson's totally okay with what Travis Kelce did. Go figure. But he's like, that's different. I didn't like Gruden. That was a much more, so it looks like, oh, it's not a big deal. You can go ahead and do what you got to do. No. It's one of those things where you just do not want to make that a norm. You don't want to make that acceptable. But so listen to what I said about some change in his behavior, erratic. His play was spiked. I talked about this about Kelce after the explosion. This guy's getting like 25, 30 yards towards the end of the season. Last 3 or 4 games, 40 yards, 3 or 4 catches, 40 yards, touchdown. Then he goes up to 75 yards, then 115 yards in the playoffs against better defenses, especially Baltimore. So listen up. This is from the other day here, if I can get this on here right. And I'll see if we can get this squared away here. Let me see here. Here's the sound bite. Look at these spiking numbers here. From 5 for 44, 3 for 16. Then it jumps up 7 for 71, 5 for 75 too, and 11 for 116 yards and a touchdown against the best defense in the league in the Ravens. Okay, maybe he changed his diet over his off week. He did look more focused. A lot of those catches were short passes, and yeah. So you heard those numbers. You heard that absolute spiking numbers like that. Let's play that over so we can get that. And I'll be going on Sonia's show on Thursday at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, folks. If your Sonia's still out there. Talking about the Super Bowl, probably. But listen up. Here, I'm going to play this bit one more time. Listen to his numbers towards the end of the season. So all of a sudden, he just becomes Superman against better defense. I don't know about this. And a touchdown. Look at these spiking numbers here. From 5 for 44, 3 for 16. Then it jumps up 7 for 71. 3 for 7. Those are towards the end of the regular season. And you say, well, they took the last week off. I said this before, but I'll repeat it. When they had the bye week in the regular season, he has 44 yards the next game. He has 44 yards against the Eagles in that loss. All right. But three straight playoff games, over 70 yards, 2 road games. This guy's 34. Been hurt already this year. And then he has 100 and 100 plus in a touchdown, outrunning DBs. So Jahmyr Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Browning, the quarterback for Minnesota, they were all, after great games like that, they were popped with a drug test. Nothing, no test, no urine test Monday after the Baltimore game. And I bring all that up, the bump against Andy Reid, I've never seen him do that before. All right. The bump against Andy Reid and what was trending on the X app Sunday night into Monday, into yesterday, roid rage. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying that's what's trending on social media. And even after all that information out there, the spike in the numbers, bumping a coach. Are you kidding me? Bumping a coach. And this is why, and the sports media, the big sports media, they're defending that, poo-pooing it. And, of course, the former players are really poo-pooing it even more. All right? So what about the coaches doing this sort of thing? I mean, you had Bobby Knight. He was choking a player. Now, maybe he wasn't choking him. His definition, maybe he was just kind of grabbing him, trying to get his attention, whatever you want to say. He was fired for that. All right, Bobby Knight. Woody Hayes grabbed a player. Now, he did punch him, but the guy had pads on. He did have pads on. But he was fired, never coached again. Woody Hayes used to coach for Ohio State. Punched a player in 1978 in a bowl game or something. You know, I used to get on the Vols coach, University of Tennessee football, Jeremy Pruitt. Now, he wasn't doing crazy stuff like that, but he was grabbing players by their face mask and holding on and pulling them on the sideline. You shouldn't touch anybody. All right. I know that I know Bill Cowher would do it sometimes, but he would gently touch it and kind of get into the guys, look into the players as they're playing. But this Kels thing is if I'm the league, I don't know what the Players Association would say about this. I don't know the parameters of something like this, but I know that, Eddie Reed downplayed that. Like I said, a lot of these former players who you could take their word at a grain of salt downplayed that, but the league should fine him for that. They should fine Kel. By the way, you touch a you bump official or just slightly put your hand on the official, that's a fine. Ask what's his name? Quay Walker, linebacker for the Packers. That wasn't maybe it wasn't official, but I do know that I want to say he pushed a trainer out in the Sunday night game in the Detroit game last year. Not this past year, but the 2022-2023, that last game where Rodgers and the Packers, Detroit puts them out of the playoffs. Okay. He should be fined for that. Preferably he should be suspended a game for that. But at least at minimum, Travis Kelce should be fined for that. And quite frankly, I would test him. I said it after the Ravens game. I would definitely test him out of that game. You say, what's his motive? He's got everything. He's got his rings. He's got the girlfriend, the famous girlfriend. That I'm just saying, some people just simply put more pressure on themselves, okay? And in his mind, not our rational mind, he's got to perform well because he's got that strong spotlight on him. He's got that spotlight on him now. He's dating the biggest pop star in the world at the moment. Whether you want to admit it or not, I'm not a huge fan of Taylor Swift, but he said, I got to go out here and perform. 3 catches, 16 yards in the Cincinnati game, man. Those were his normal numbers prior to his playoff numbers is all I got to say. And then you get this. He may think that, hey, listen, I've lost a step. I'm going to have to do something else here. I'm going to have to push the envelope a little bit more and see what I can get away with so I can live up to the hype here. Listen, the guy's a great player. I don't know about the greatest of all time. I know he's got a great scheme around him, great quarterback, but his career numbers aren't what a Tony Gonzalez is right now. If you're just looking at career numbers. Now, great big game player. Him and Gronk are two of the best big game player tight ends I've ever seen. But maybe he's just under a lot of pressure, and that's the way he's acting. And he's putting this. But, the other may very well be the case as well. I talked about a possible motive with him trying to live up to the hype of what he was 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. But, and again, the league should fine him for that, and they should test him, drug testing. In my opinion, if you ain't got nothing to hide, you take the test. Everybody agrees to it. Again, CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, even a quarterback got drug tested, Jake Browning. All right. So, I don't know if I did this last week or not. I'm trying to keep up with it. Good scope, bad scope, where I had something right, where I was off about something or wrong, just flat out wrong. The good, obviously the score. I mean, I said 27-23 Kansas City. It was actually 25-22. I said it'd be a 4-point game. In the 20s, it was a 3-point game in the 20s. All right. A slight edge for Kansas City, two turnovers, 2 turnovers for both teams. Then it comes down to Mahomes versus Purdy. I'm going to take Mahomes all day and twice on Sunday. All right. Bad scope. I actually thought Isaiah Pacheco was going to get the MVP of this thing. I thought he's going to get two touchdowns and about 90 yards. I was judging by the way that Aaron Jones ran against this team. The Jahmyr Gibbs of the world ran against this team. And Wilkes really had them playing well against the run. against. They really did a good job. They stripped him once. You know, he did get 33 yards receiving, but he didn't break out like I thought. You know, that fumble was crucial. First one I've seen Pacheco make. Bad mistake. So wrong about Pacheco getting the MVP. Good scope. I thought McCaffrey in the running game would be a big part of San Francisco and what they would do to potentially win this game. He did have the 22 carries. He had the 8 catches. He had the touchdown. He was the center point. He was the center point. They had 31 rushing yards total. They probably should have won. That's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, right? But that's what we do. I brought up the fact that the Denver team, with all their problems on defense, all their fallouts, all their embarrassments, including a game where they gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins one time, they actually beat this Chiefs team with 40 rushing attempts. 8 of those attempts were by Russell Wilson. Debo gets like 3 carries. Did not get the carries Debo would get. Okay. Brock Purdy, 3. He probably should have had 7 or 8. This is something I'm sure Shanahan is agonizing over right to this day, right at this hour, probably. Man, I should have schemed up some more running plays when we had. You want to wear these guys down. That's what I don't understand about these coaches. Why don't you look and see who's had success against these teams? Watch every single play that the Raiders, who beat the Chiefs on the 25th, Christmas Day, in Arrowhead, what they did. Aiden O'Connell, a rookie, did not have a touchdown pass, but they ran the ball and they ran the ball, you know? So, but I was right about the McCaffrey part, not so much about everything else. McCaffrey, if for whatever reason that they did get the win, McCaffrey would have gotten the MVP. Okay, now, bad scope. I was for sure between the Ravens game and the Super Bowl, between Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, who've been playing great, had some chemistry. Both had chemistry with Lamar Jackson. And, of course, George Kittle would all have good games against this Kansas City team, and that just wasn't the case. Kittle got banged up and got hurt, but they did not have it. They didn't score. They didn't have over 50 yards. Nobody had over 3 catches. It was just not part of it. With those 2 corners, that's what. How else are you going to attack them? Wrong about that. But hey, you gotta commit. That, again, hats off to Steve Spagnuolo. People are asking why Spagnuolo not getting head coaching opportunities. He was terrible at his last coaching. I think it was with the Rams or somebody. Probably not a good interview. He's probably, in my opinion, just coordinator material. Now, if I'm Mr. Hunt family, the Hunt family, I'm paying this guy $5 million to stay, because he may be the best coordinator in the game, or big game coordinator in the game right now. Him, and I do like that Cincinnati Lou and Aronmo. He's got his guys jumping routes like nobody's business with the Chiefs here. So, off about that. Good scope. I said it would go over. It went over by a point, but it went over. I thought it would go 50. And, of course, it did go over with that last touchdown. It was 46.5, and obviously 47 was the over here. So that's a good scope, bad scope. By the way, this Super Bowl, folks, the ratings were out of this world. It's the highest rated of all time. Super Bowl, what did they say here? Most watched telecast in history, Super Bowl. Of course, CBS are patting themselves on the back. 123.4 million viewers. CBS led the way with 120, the largest audience in network history. the most streamed Super Bowl, led by a record-setting audience at Paramount Plus. More than 200 million people watched all or part of the Super Bowl across networks, the highest unduplicated total audience in the history. That's up 10%. And I tell you, it people want to say a lot of people tune in. You get different audiences. I thought Usher was pretty good. I don't think he was great. I think it was Jason Whitlock said something like, "Man, he sings about 20 seconds of each song. Why not do 10 songs? Why not do 3, 4, maybe 5 songs and just sing the whole song, or do 2 or 3 and maybe find a duet to do with somebody." I don't know. But I don't like that, doing just a little preview of each song like that. I didn't like that. But, with the halftime shows, people watch it. Behind commercials, I didn't really watch many of them. I recorded and kind of fast forwarded it. But I didn't see any that was really eye-catching this year, And I do notice that Clay Travis, who likes to troll the sports media that leans, it's really far left now. It's crazy at times left. But when you get political stuff in there, look at how much I just mentioned over 200 million at one point. Think about it this way. In 2021, from 2018 to 2021, these are the ratings here. This is after the Kaepernick stuff, right? 2018, 103 million. 2019, 98 million. 2020, 101 million. That was when people was locked up. They were in COVID, right? 2021, 95 million. They slowly, the last couple of years, they've gotten off the COVID stuff. They've gotten off the COVID stuff here. And, they've gotten off that political stuff too. Gotten off the whole, but you could see people starting to come back here. They're not showing that. I know they had 2 national anthems, which I surprisingly saw people really saying that was stupid. Let's just have one national anthem that people can agree on. I mean, that's ridiculous. So when you start trying to appeal to what you think is the country as a whole, and really you're appealing to algorithms out on the West Coast somewhere, it's not been proven. And people, he calls it the far left. Maybe that's probably way. I don't think I've talked to people that are air quote Democrats or whatever, or they don't believe in some of this crazy stuff, that it's said on here. Taking shots at the cops. When you start doing all that stuff, it's escapism. I did a big clip there with Jeff Deficit on the level of escapism, that sports is. I mean, this guy's in a psychiatric hospital. You can check that on my reels here through the Instagram stuff, and I put it on the X app here, and then obviously on the YouTube channel. People really lean into this stuff for escapism. They may be going through a hard time or nothing. They don't want to be lectured about something. You don't want to try to push some kind of political agenda or your issue outside of that. There's a time and place for everything. It's not during the game, and they've gotten away from that. They still got some work to do, the NFL, but you could see it starting to really grow. And plus, I do think that the streaming part's really helping. Some of us in this world still have to work, even on Super Bowl Sunday. I've had to work days where I watched the Super Bowl on TV at work when I was between doing my round, working security. I watched part of it. Some people have to work guard shacks, police people, fire and medic people. They would love to have their little phone here. And you're at the fire department, blah, 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 and you're still watching the Super Bowl. And you could see that those audiences are really high right now. So it's kind of it's the nature of the league right now. Anyway, so don't lecture people on stuff. That helps once you get away from politics, and plus when you got star power, it helps too. When you have a Mahomes, now people are starting. I think the Chiefs Super Bowls are going to be pretty highly rated. I remember watching the Super Bowl with a friend of mine, and what was it, 17-18, the Eagles and the Patriots. And man, did he hated the Patriots. God. I said, man, Nick Foles versus Brady, better coach, better quarterback. I'm going to take Brady. Everybody, I don't know. This is a team of destiny and yada, yada, yada. Kind of like what we was hearing about the 49ers here. And people are making that case. Listen, Nick Foles beat Brady. Brock Purdy can beat Patrick Mahomes. And when Foles was winning, this guy with the church, he's real quiet and stuff, and he's jumping around. This is a very, very nice house. Matt had a nice house. He's jumping around, dancing and stuff when they're making all these plays. And we know what happened, obviously. The Eagles end up winning the game. And he's celebrating. But he grown to dislike the Patriots so much that he loved to hate them and watch them get beat. Now, I didn't like the Lakers like that in the early 2000s. When the Lakers were coming up with Shaq and Kobe, I thought Shaq was really cocky. He was a mean guy. Not Shaq, Kobe was. As a player, he got better once he retired. The tragedy, God bless the family. But as a player, I couldn't stand Kobe. Most people couldn't. A lot of us have revisionist history. He made it think it was all about him. I knew it was a combination of him and Shaq, mainly Shaq, and I couldn't stand that team. I didn't like him, Derek, none of them. Robert Horry, his cheap shots, you name it. But I wanted to see him get beat, and I tell you, when a team beat, I was a Kings fan. I was a Detroit Pistons fan in 2004. When they played them. I was a Spurs fan for that series. I wanted to see, but the better the team, the villain, and that's what can't. Now, Kansas City, I don't have that issue. I just think the world of Mahomes. The fact that his dad's had those problems and he's still over. I think he's a special player. I think he's a great guy. Even though I've got criticisms of Kels and his stuff, still a great player. He doesn't rub me like Kobe did back in the day. But people want to see these teams that win more. Again, they start to become, okay, now you have the antagonists. The underdog is the protagonist. That was the 49ers here. The little engine, the underdog. So you stand people. Everybody at work said they wanted the 49ers to win. Not one person said they wanted the Chiefs to win. They said, we think the Niners are going to win. We think that. I said, does your heart think the Niners are going to win, or does your head? And they said, well, look at all these games, that they lost during the regular season. I said, man, I don't know. Great defense. Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy. I don't know about that. I'm not going to get beat again. Listen, I've been rolling the last 3 Super Bowls. Other than this one, I got this one on the money, but I lost. I picked Patrick Mahomes when he didn't have his right tackle and his left tackle against Tampa. I lost that game. And I picked the upset with Cincinnati. I was a drive away. I thought Cincinnati was going to beat that Ram team. Of course, that didn't happen. And then, of course, last year, the Eagles looked just unbelievable. And I thought I was right. They had a 10-point lead. And of course, Mahomes beats them on a high ankle sprain. This guy's got a well of a resume. If his career ended today, he would be a Hall of Famer. And I'm going to go into how far I think, how good I think he is. I'll go on that tomorrow. Before Jeffrey comes on, I'll get his opinion about that as well. So, it's I don't know. I forgot what I was talking about. Anyways, I digress. But people, what my point is, I'm tired of seeing him. They say that people hated Christian Laettner for Duke in the 90s, but those ratings were really high. You either love them or you hate them. You know, a lot of people love or hate Dallas Cowboys back in the day. The Yankees, I hated the Yankees. I'm from the South, prime and proper sports out of Atlanta. I was a huge Braves fan, right? And they beat the Braves, went down 0-2. And I knew they was buying the league up. But, you want to see those big, powerful teams get beat. Yeah, because you know that the opposition had to play a great game to beat them. And in the end, you're going to see elite baseball. You're going to see elite football to beat them. The Giants did not make any errors in those 2 wins. Eli, big pivotal moments. Eli getting out of the sack. David Tyree, miracle catch. Mario Manningham, perfect strike down the field, perfect catch. Hardly any penalties, no turnovers. Tom Coughlin goes in the record books there. He goes in the history books of NFL history of beating Belichick twice and Brady in the sport. So, but in the end, you're seeing elite football because those are elite players led by elite coaches and elite quarterbacks. So if you guys like the show, share the show. I'll be back on tomorrow again. I'll have Jeffrey Defskovic on at the 30 minutes into the program. I'll go into where I think some people are already overreacting. He's the best I've ever seen. Not going to go that far, but Mahomes, he's coming up my list. And I'm checking it twice like Santa Claus, everybody. So, good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.